another one. But anyway, coming back to this taxi ride that we seemed to steered off earlier due to some bad signals and load shedding. So thank you to ESCOM. But we're back on air again, and Aisha's back on air again from Taxi Through Mzansi, the anthology. She's one of the authors, and I gave you her briefing earlier. So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A very warm welcome back to our show.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me, and apologies for the load shedding. I think blame ESCOM.
Yeah, as I said, it thanks to ESCOM, not Ayesha Kajee. But anyway, we seem to get around those constraints. Um, Talk to me a little bit about yourself. A very interesting personality, I must say. What enticed you to actually, get into writing this particular piece you did? Because I think your piece is phenomenal. It talks a lot of, it talks in many directions, different messages. But let's first talk about yourself and what enticed you into this.
Well, there was a call for a piece about identity, and this is a piece I wrote some time back after reflecting on something someone said at a soup day I hold every year. Well, not in COVID times, obviously, but it's an
Uh-huh.
open house that I hold for my family and friends. And some years ago, a young man, actually himself a young British man of Indian descent, said South African Indians and South African Indian women particularly are either curry pullers or honey chows. And everybody started laughing. And then we asked him to explain what he meant. And if you read the story, you'll find that out. Obviously, there's a pun on the word curry puller. As you probably know, Nafeesa, the Tamil word for curry leaves is karive pulai. And of course, honey
Yes.
chow is a take or a pun on our world renowned South African national dish, bunny chow. So he really got me thinking, and as a social scientist I then invited a few of my friends around to my home, all of them of Indian descent, all of them self-identifying as black, as feminist, etc. And we had a
Right,
slumber party, for want of a better word, and we
right.
really explored the questions he'd raised about identity, about multiple identity, and about social cohesion in a very heterogeneous society.
Mm-mm. I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's something that we need to look at. And I think what's important is we talk about it all the time. Is although we come from different backgrounds and we live in a democratic country, I think what's unique about South Africa is the Ubuntu and the interaction of different cultures that come together to try and create that understanding with each other. And I think that's what your story also brings to the fore is, as you know, is about interacting with each other and trying to create that understanding. And I love the idea of you saying, the magic of chewing on betel nut leaves, and then whilst we're dancing into pantsulas, it kind of makes sense. I mean, because recently there was that one song that everybody was going crazy about, but the ideology of it is, I'm not saying that it's okay to listen to music, but the ideology of it was to try and bring people together through a different concept. And what I love about your concept is you trying to bring people together through narrative, and that's what's important.
Yes, I think that's really important to me, that we talk to one another more, we speak to one another more. And for me, one mechanism to do that is through my writing. I've written since I was a child, but very rarely published other than, of course, my academic and nonfiction stuff. And so I decided to send this particular story in, or essay in, largely because a friend, a Belgian friend now living in the UK, challenged me to actually start publishing some stuff, saying to me that
Mm.
it's important and that these stories need to be told.
Oh, most definitely. And I think with the story being told, we get to get a better understanding of each other and the different cultures. And it kind of brings us together to say, oh, this is how it is. Because I think in many instances, there are misconceptions. And it's about trying to alleviate those misconceptions and try to create this bridging of a gap and creating more understanding amongst ourselves and more tolerance with each other. Because I think a lot of the times, and I think you'll agree with me, is that there's times where we misunderstand each other especially people that come from different cultures, is because we don't understand the culture and what it meant, what it means, and how we can get around it. And then when we start finding out about it, and we start creating that respect level and that building up of a relationship, it creates something so beautiful. And that word that is Ubuntu.
Absolutely. And of course, I was at a memorial last Sunday for the former Archbishop Tutu, which is, something he lived all of his life. So I think
Yes.
it's really, really important. And I think, this story and this collection of stories is an attempt at getting us to understand one another. I used to have, for example, when I lectured at WITS, I would have students coming to me and saying, we had such a different concept of what Indian people were or what Muslim people were
Mm,
before we had you as a lecturer. And I think it's really important for us as South Africans of Indian descent, as South Africans of Muslim faith, to understand what these different aspects of our identity mean and how they make up the entirety of what we are, and yet also how we convey this to other people who are not perhaps from the same cultural or faith backgrounds as us. Um, and that we still retain a South Africanness and an Africanness that is, I think, increasingly important in a very globalized world, but also that young South Africans of various
mm,
cultures and backgrounds start to
mm.
see themselves as part of a greater Africa within a greater world. So I think these are some of the things my story tries to do while retaining a sense of humor about it all.
I love that aspect of it. A lot of people, when they pick up a piece and they've had a very difficult day, it's nice to read your story because through the wit and through that humorism, as you say, you get enticed into a better space to be able to understand things. But it's done more from a light-hearted version, and I think that's what people enjoy about your story is the fact that it's light-hearted yet very impactful.
Well, I hope so, and thank you for saying that. I think, something that's resonated with some of the younger readers who've read the story and come back to me. They've actually said that the whole dilemma, the sort of South African Indian dilemma or South African Indian Muslim dilemma of needing to get married, of being pushed by the community and the sort of the society we live in to get married, and how that's really difficult for young women in South Africa of this background today, because they're no longer marrying for the same imperatives as they once did. That seems
Yeah.
to have struck a chord. So, one of the characters in my story is a young South African woman who's very independent, who's being
Mm.
pushed by family and friends to consider taking a life partner and feels that she has no options.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to respond to that after the ad break. So give me a few minutes.
Lovely.
Ja, Yakina, man, you should stop all the riba, Hajo. Ach, this insurance price is going up again.
Oh, we are not free of riba, Babu. You need to stop the insurance.
We have to have insurance, Hajo. You know how bad it is with all the crime and the accidents.
Have a little yakin now, Babu.
Yeah, man, I do have a little yakin, but I wish there was a way to leave all these riba insurance companies, man. It's so much riba.
Babu, I can't handle this. The stench. It stinks.
Is that my underarms?
No, the riba stinks. Please find a way to stop this riba insurance, Babu.
Leaving Riba Insurance is easier than you think. Call Amana IFS for all your personal and commercial Takaful needs. 0861 786 393. Amana, leave Riba for good. Amana IFS is a registered financial services provider.
Kids these days are smart, and when you're competing for their attention against their smartphones, you need to make smart choices, like using Sunfoil triple refined pure sunflower oil in every meal you make. It's naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether you're cooking, frying, or baking, you get the great tasting results that'll get their attention faster than the latest app. And if that doesn't work, change the Wi-Fi password. Sunfoil. Now we're cooking.
As the crisis in Palestine continues, the Africa Muslims Agency teams are on the ground facilitating emergency food and medical assistance to the affected families. Donate 15,000 rand or any amount and help the people of Palestine. Call AMA now on 083-251-9376 or donate online at Africa Muslims Agency.co.za. Africa Muslims Agency, inspiring the spirit of giving.
Are we on last Ed?
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Welcome back, and I'm in conversation with Ayesha Kajee, one of the authors from Taxi Through Mzansi, a phenomenal anthology. And before we went on the break, Ayesha, you spoke about, this the subject that I think is kind of, and I'm going to say it in inverted commas, taboo. The marriage issue. I remember when I was young, it was so funny. My grandmother would always remind me and ask me the question, "When are you going to get married? You're reaching your expiry date," and I used to just laugh it off, And this is what I spoke to an author about last week as well, is the fact for us to be able to change our mindset in some way. And I'm sure this is also what you're trying to do through your synopsis and your story, is say, let's take some of the values of yesteryear, because there was absolutely nothing wrong with our ancestors. They had some amazing values and principles with them. Let's bring some of those yesteryear principles and morals into our everyday lives. And of course, also that connection, because as we know, COVID has taken the connection away. So we're trying to find that reconnection with families, the reconnection with friends, the reconnection with relationships, and then move it, take those things from the yesteryear and move it into this new generation, but with the understanding that times are different and the lifestyles are different and that individuals are different, and saying, let's not get married for the sake of it, but of course for the right reasons. We know it's a sunnah, but let's do it the right way. And I think that's where where it comes in, where I think what we're saying is take our yesteryear values, bring it, entice our youth with the yesteryear values, but at the same time understand where they're coming from and try and sync those two together, where we create an amazing unison of a relationship.
Absolutely. I think it is about appreciating the culture, the values of yesteryear, as you've put it. And at the same time, acknowledging that we live in a different world now, and that we sometimes don't feel that we fit in this world that we live. So, for example, of the 5 women in my story, some of them are married, some of them are single. The youngest one, as I said, is confronting this pressure from her society and family to marry. And I'm going to just quote something that she reads here. She says, "As a feminist, a South African of Indian heritage uncompromisingly repudiates the patriarchal expectations of her Indian community and also stridently counters the pervasive machismo she encounters throughout much of Africa. Accordingly, her self-concept veers between the notion that she is a mongrel of sorts, and who better to militate for the rights of the downtrodden than a mongrel, and the wry acknowledgement that she suffers from a multiple disordered identity."
Sure.
So, he's making fun of
That's
herself.
rather deep, but it's witty, but rather deep. It gets you thinking. What is it? Yes,
Sorry,
carry
go
on,
ahead.
Aisha. No,
I
you
was
go
going to
ahead.
say that some of the characters also bring in, because they're all, or pretty much all of them, are well traveled on this continent. They bring in some of the history, the untold history of the continent. For example, that in Morocco, there is the world's oldest university that was established by a woman, and by a Muslim woman at that, long before there were universities in Europe. So, these are untold aspects of our history as Muslims, as Africans, that many people don't know, and
Right.
that this story tries to bring in.
Yes. And it's, I think, also to be able to get over our stereotype way of thinking and not getting judgmental and respecting each one for the types of potentials they have and the things that they'd like to do in their lives and achieve. And I think that's going to create a better understanding. And I think it's starting off with ourselves and then going, into the communities and making them understand that things need to change as far as mindset is concerned. That's the word. The word is mindset.
Mindset. Absolutely. It's all about attitude in the end. And
Yeah.
we can choose to look at load shedding as something that's a blight on our lives, and often it is. But sometimes, like yesterday, we had load shedding here. And what I did was I went and made myself a cold meal. And I said, well, at least ESCOM's contributing to my drive towards cleaner eating. So we can choose to be positive or negative about everything.
That is true. Although you've used ESCOM, that's fine. We will use that subject for another day. But I get what you're saying is having to look at the situation you're in, trying to turn it to a positive. And I love the connotation that you used. You took it and you changed it for the positive. And I think that's what matters. Is that's how we're going to get each other forward. And I also think we need to start taking out that negativity in us, where we look at people in a negative connotation and say, what is it that's nice about that person? Let's look at that particular positive aspect about that particular person, and let's see how we can try and create unisons that way. And I think as women as well, and a general consensus as South Africans, we need to start creating support structures for each other, which has already started through COVID-19, which I found absolutely phenomenal. But I think we need to keep going at it, because that's what is going to edge us on to be the best and bring out the best of ourselves. They say be the best you can be. That's what will happen.
Yes, absolutely. I think, if we try and have more generosity of spirit when we interpret other people's actions, other people's words, we'll find that generosity comes back to us in myriad ways. It's about, I know ESCOM is a bad example, and we shouldn't become complacent about it, because there is also a lot of accountability that needs to happen around governance in this country. So we shouldn't become complacent about what's wrong, or we shouldn't become accepting of people or organizations or institutions that are blatantly doing wrong things. But at the same time, instead of immediately jumping to judge negatively, if we could have an open mind about it and sort of say, well, maybe so-and-so is just having a bad day. We don't know what kind of traffic they were stuck in this morning, and that might account for their mood. It just helps everybody, I think, to be happier and more content and more interdependent in that spirit of Ubuntu than we would previously have been.
And even just a little smile goes a long way.
Absolutely. A little smile, a little humility, a sense of humor, they contribute a hell of a lot to a more contented life, a life of afia, if you will.
That is so true. What do you think you'd like to leave our viewers with today?
Well, I'd like to encourage every one of them to go out and buy a copy of Taxi Through Mzansi, which I've got here in front of me. It's available from the individual authors as well as from Media Inc. It's also available as an ebook and in some bookstores. So ask your local bookstore to stock it. So I'd like to hear that more people are reading our stories, because quite often, young people particularly, but people generally tend to read stories that come from outside of South Africa and outside of the continent. And I think that's a big pity. So I'd like to encourage people to do that. But also, as I said, just encourage people to be generous with their smiles, with their skills, with their talents, with their time and energy and effort. It's not just about charity, is not just about money. It's about giving of yourself.
That's true. Firstly, I'd like to say Taxi Through Mzansi is proudly South African. And as you know, as they say in Afrikaans, local is lekker. So why not pick it up and get yourself enticed and motivated and uplifted in many directions through the different stories? Because as I was saying earlier, each story is short, but yet very impactful. And it gets you thinking about the particular subject that the author is talking about. And no better way than through narrative. So I want to thank you so much for joining me and enticing myself and our viewers and the team into thinking about what you spoke about. And it was really a phenomenal discussion. I wish you nothing but the best going forward. We got a question from a viewer, so give me a second. What else is in the book? And Gillian Anstey is asking this question.
Jillian's actually a friend of mine. So hi, Jill. It's a book that basically showcases the experiences of being South African from about, I think it's about 35 authors. And everybody has a different take on what it means to be South African. Many of the authors are female, a few are male, many are Muslim, but not all are. Some self-identify as Indian, others self-identify as colored, others self-identify as black or white. So there's a myriad
Yeah,
different
definitely.
experiences in
And
there of
and
what it means to be South
let
African.
me ad hoc to that, Gillian. Um, Speaking to the authors and having this series has meant a lot to us as a Salam Media team, because the book is something that I suggest you really get your hands on, because the topics are so pertinent and relative to our everyday lives. Think about taking this journey on a taxi and driving through from one area to another area and facing different experiences and a different journey all the time. So get yourself enticed into that, because what it does is it doesn't just do that, it also has a lot of impactful meaning. So that is why we're saying you have to, and I get very excited when I get to the segment, because I always do this. I go like, take the taxi ride through Mzansi, because what it does is it entices you into a positive space, into a positive mindset, and gets you thinking about everyday relative topics and educates you on how to actually deal with those situations. And I hope we've brought that to your light in a good way. So I shall be coming back to you. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. It's been a phenomenal discussion, and I absolutely look forward to reading the full synopsis, this full story. Once I get my hands on this book, and getting myself also enticed into better spaces and places. Thank you so much. Wishing you all the best going forward, and looking forward to listening to that next story that Ayesha Kajee has coming for us.
Shukran jazilan, Nafeesa. Thank you so much. It's been a lovely discussion. Assalamu
Likewise,
alaikum.
all the best. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That was Ayesha Kajee, one of the authors from the anthology Taxi Through Mzansi. Definitely something to get your hands on. It's a book full of essence, and it teaches you many a different aspects of, should we say, relative topics that we go through every single day, but from different aspects of community. So it just doesn't tap into the Muslim version. So get your hands on it, because trust me, you're never going to regret reading that. Talking about not regretting, I read something again by Fearless Motivation. It says, one day you will be exactly where you want to be. Until then, keep going, keep believing, keep learning, keep working, and keep growing. And I think that's what it's about. We were just talking about mindset, and it's about changing our mindsets for the positive and telling ourselves what is it that we can do best to have a better quality of life. For myself and the team, Anna, thank you so much for joining us on these pertinent topics that we discussed during the course of this morning and afternoon. And we look forward to chatting to you same time, same place next week, Thursday, and hoping to bring should we say, a better quality of life through the show for yourself. Thank you so much. For myself and the team, have a lovely rest of the week and weekend going forward. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.